The lantern swings gently with the rhythm of the waves, casting long, dancing shadows across the wooden deck. Above, the Milky Way stretches like a spilled cask of silver milk across an endless, velvet sky. The only sounds are the creaking of the ship's timbers and the rhythmic slap of water against the hull. Welcome to Sleep History. I am your guide to the past. If you enjoy our journey tonight, you might consider subscribing for more quiet travels. But for now, simply let your shoulders drop and your breath slow down. We are drifting back to the year 1718, stepping onto the worn planks of a vessel crossing the Atlantic. The night watch is a solitary duty. You stand near the rail, wrapping your coat tighter against the cool salt mist. The ocean here is not a place of chaos, but of vast, heavy silence. The horizon is lost in the darkness, blurring the line between the deep water and the deep sky. You listen to the ship breathe. It is a living thing, a complex skeleton of oak and pine held together by tar and iron. Every groan of the wood tells a story of the thousands of miles traveled. You watch the stars rotate slowly overhead, using them to mark the passage of hours. There is no clock here, only the slow turning of the heavens and the sand running through the hourglass by the binnacle. Dawn arrives not with a burst of light, but with a gradual graying of the east. The ship's bell rings, a soft, metallic clarity that signals the change of the watch. Below deck, the crew begins to stir. The air down here is thick and warm, smelling of unwashed wool, damp wood, and the lingering scent of pipe tobacco. Hammocks sway in unison, a forest of canvas cocoons suspended from the beams. You slide out of your berth, your bare feet finding the wooden floorboards. The ship rolls gently, and your body adjusts automatically, finding its balance without thought. This is the sea legs sailors speak of, a permanent synchronization with the motion of the tides. Morning labor begins with the holy stone. This is the daily ritual of cleaning the deck. You kneel alongside 50 other men, using heavy, flat stones and sand to scour the planks. It is monotonous, rhythmic work. The sound of stone on wood is a low, grinding hum that vibrates through your knees. Buckets of seawater are hauled up from the ocean and splashed across the boards, washing away the salt and the dust of yesterday. The water runs cool over your hands. There is a strange satisfaction in the task, watching the wood turn pale and smooth under the friction. The sun climbs higher, warming your back, drying the wet planks until they gleam white in the mid-morning light. The galley offers a breakfast of necessity. You sit on a coil of thick hemp rope, holding a tin plate. The food is hardtack, a biscuit so dense and dry it must be soaked in broth or water before it can be eaten. It tastes of flour and thyme. There is salted beef, cured to the texture of leather, preserved in barrels that have been stored in the dark hold for months. You eat slowly, chewing with deliberation. Fresh food is a memory here. You find yourself daydreaming about an apple, the crunch of a carrot, or the sweet juice of a pear. The lack of green things makes the gums ache and the joints stiff, a slow reminder of the body's need for the land. Discipline on the ship is held together by the Articles of Agreement. Before the voyage began, every man signed his name or made his mark on a piece of parchment. It is a document of democracy in a world of kings. It states that every man has a vote in affairs of the moment. It dictates the distribution of provisions. You gather near the mainmast for a council. The quartermaster speaks, his voice calm and leveled. He is the counterweight to the captain, the protector of the crew's interests. Disputes are settled here, not with brawls, but with words and majority rule. There is a sense of fairness in this floating society, a rigid order that keeps the peace in the middle of a lawless ocean. The afternoon wind picks up, filling the canvas sails with a deep, thrumming sound. The ship heels to the side, cutting through the water with renewed purpose. You are sent aloft to the rigging. Climbing the ratlins is like ascending a ladder to the sky. The higher you go, the more the world expands. From the top of the mainmast, the ocean is a textured quilt of sapphire and indigo. The wind-up here is clean and strong, stripping away the smells of the lower decks. You help furl a topsail, the heavy canvas rough against your fingertips. Your hands are calloused and stained with tar, shaped by the work of knots and lines. Far below, the deck looks like a toy, and the men are merely specks moving in their daily patterns. Scanning the horizon, you spot a distant speck of white, a sail. The mood on the ship shifts, not to panic, but to a focused, quiet intensity. It is a merchant vessel heavy with cargo. The chase begins slowly. Hours pass as the gap closes. There is no screaming, only the squeal of blocks and the rustle of adjusting sails. The captain orders the flag raised. The black flag. It snaps in the wind, a stark symbol against the blue sky. It is a message of negotiation, a request for surrender without bloodshed. The merchant ship sees the colors and slows, dropping its sails. They know the code. Resistance brings violence. Surrender brings mercy. The water between the ships grows calm as you drift alongside. Grappling hooks tossed gently to bridge the gap. Boarding is a transfer of goods, a business transaction conducted on the open water. You help haul crates from their hold to yours. The air fills with new scents. There are barrels of molasses, heavy and sweet, bales of fine cotton, sacks of tobacco that smell of earth and dried leaves. And then the prize that brings a cheer from the crew, a crate of limes. The citrus fruit is more valuable than gold to men who have lived on salted meat. The tart, bright fragrance cuts through the humid air. You are given a share immediately, biting into the rind, the acid stinging pleasantly, a rush of vitamin and life flooding your system. With the hold full, the ship turns toward a hidden cove to careen. The vessel must be cleaned. You sail into shallow, turquoise waters, anchoring near a white sand beach. The ship is deliberately tipped onto its side on the sandbank, exposing the hull. For days, the routine changes. You stand waist-deep in the warm, clear water, scraping barnacles and seaweed from the bottom of the ship. The smell of burning pitch fills the air as cracks are sealed. At night, you sleep on the dry sand, the ground solid and unmoving beneath you. A fire crackles nearby, roasting fresh fish caught from the reef. The smoke rises straight up into the still, tropical air. Weeks turn into months, and the longing for permanence grows. You have earned your share. The pouch of coins in your sea chest is heavy, enough to buy a small plot of land far from the salt spray. The decision is made quietly. When the ship next docks at a friendly port, you pack your few belongings. You say your farewells to the men you have lived and worked with. There is no fanfare, just a nod from the quartermaster and a clasp of hands. You walk down the gangplank, your boots making a heavy, solid sound on the dock. You find a small cottage on a hill overlooking the harbor. The walls are stone, cool and thick. The roof is thatched with dried palm fronds that rustle in the breeze. You plant a garden. You grow rows of green vegetables and a small grove of orange trees. The work is different now. It is the work of patience, of waiting for rain, of tending the soil. You sleep in a bed that does not sway. Yet, in the quiet of the evening, you still sit on your porch and look out at the horizon. You watch the ships leaving the harbor, their sails catching the dying light. You listen to the distant sound of the tide rolling in and out, a rhythmic, eternal breathing that lulls you into a deep, dreamless sleep. The ocean is no longer your master, but it remains your oldest friend, whispering to you through the dark, warm night. The sun rises over the island with a warmth that feels different than it did at sea. On the ocean, the dawn was a signal for labor, a call to scrub decks and haul lines before the heat became oppressive. Here, in the quiet of your stone cottage, the light is an invitation, not a command. It spills across the rough-hewn floorboards, illuminating dust motes that dance in the still air. You throw back the simple linen quilt. The bed does not pitch. The floor does not roll. You stand on solid ground, and for a moment your legs still brace for a wave that never comes. The stone beneath your feet is cool and smooth. You walk to the window and push open the wooden shutters. The hinges squeak softly, a domestic sound that replaces the screaming of wind in the rigging. Outside, the world is green and gold, smelling of damp earth and blooming jasmine. You step out into the garden, a small patch of order you have carved from the wild hillside. The orange trees you planted are still young, their leaves glossy and dark. You check them with the same care you once used to inspect the rigging. You touch the soil, finding it dry. You fetch water from the rain barrel by the side of the house. The water is clear and sweet, devoid of the brackish tang of the ship's supply. You pour it slowly around the base of the trees. The earth drinks it greedily. There is a profound silence here, broken only by the chirping of a ground dove and the distant rustle of palm fronds. This is your morning watch now. There is no horizon to scan for enemies, only the slow, patient growth of leaves and fruit. By mid-morning, the stillness of the garden gives way to the hum of the town below. You take the path that winds down the hill, your boots crunching on crushed shell and gravel. The walk is easy, a gentle descent through a tunnel of green foliage. You pass other cottages, seeing neighbors hanging laundry on lines that stretch between trees. A woman nods to you as she sweeps her porch. You nod back. It is a simple gesture, yet it marks your place here. You are no longer a transient ghost passing through a port. You are a resident. You belong to the hill. The air grows warmer as you reach the market square, heavy with the scent of roasting coffee and spices. The market is a maze of stalls shaded by colorful canvas awnings. It reminds you of the ports of Nassau or Port Royal, but without the edge of danger. There are no shouts of drunken brawls, no flash of steel in the alleyways. Here, the commerce is gentle. You stop at the baker's stall. The bread is stacked in golden loaves, dusted with flour. You buy a round loaf, the crust thick and hard, the inside soft and airy. It is warm in your hands. You exchange a few copper coins, the metal clinking softly. The baker asks about your trees. You tell him they are taking root. The conversation is slow, unhurried. There is no urgency to move on, no tide to catch. You continue toward the harbor, drawn by the smell of salt. The docks are busy, but it is the industry of peace. Fishermen are mending nets, their fingers moving with the same dexterity you once saw in the sailmaker. You stop to watch an old man repairing the hull of a small skiff. The smell of hot tar brings a sudden, sharp memory of the open ocean. You watch him hammer oakum into the seams. He looks up and offers a toothless smile. You ask if he needs a hand. He hands you a mallet without a word. For an hour, you work beside him. The rhythm of the strike is familiar. The wood vibrates under your touch. You are useful here not for your ability to fight, but for your ability to build. When the work is done, he offers you a fresh snapper wrapped in a banana leaf. You accept it with thanks. The afternoon sun is high and bright as you climb back up the hill. The heat is heavy, pressing down on the island. You retreat into the cool shadow of your cottage. The stone walls hold the chill of the night, keeping the interior comfortable. You place the fish and bread on the wooden table. It is a meal fit for a captain, yet you eat it in the quiet solitude of a man who answers to no one. You spend the rest of the day carving. You found a piece of driftwood on the beach, bleached white by the sun and smoothed by the surf. You sit on the porch, whittling the wood with a small knife. Shavings curl onto the floor. Slowly, a shape emerges. A bird, perhaps, or a ship. The knife moves surely. The passage of time is marked only by the lengthening shadows stretching across the floor. As evening approaches, the air changes. The humidity rises, and heavy clouds begin to pile up on the western horizon. A storm is coming. In your old life, this would have been a moment of high alert. Sails would be reefed, hatches battened, lifelines rigged. Now you simply stand and watch. The sky turns a bruised purple. The wind picks up, rattling the palm fronds like dry bones. You walk around the cottage, securing the shutters. The latch falls into place with a solid thunk. You light a tallow candle on the table. The flame flickers in the draft, then steadies. Outside, the first heavy drops of rain hit the roof. It is a drumming sound, loud and rhythmic. The storm breaks fully as night falls. The wind howls around the corners of the house, searching for a way in. But the stone holds firm. You are safe. You sit in a high-backed chair, listening to the fury of the weather. Rain lashes against the wood of the door. Thunder rolls across the island, shaking the ground. It is a deep, resonant vibration that you feel in your chest. You sip a cup of tea, brewed from herbs grown in your garden. It is warm and soothing. The contrast between the violence outside and the peace inside is absolute. You do not need to fight the storm tonight. You do not need to stand on a slippery deck, soaked to the bone, praying for dawn. You simply wait. The candle burns low, casting long shadows that flicker on the walls. By morning, the storm has passed. You wake to a silence so profound it feels like a physical weight. You open the door to a washed clean world. The air smells of ozone and wet vegetation. The path is muddy, and puddles reflect the bright blue sky. You walk out to inspect the garden. A few branches are down, but the orange trees still stand. The rain has soaked deep into the roots. Life here is resilient. You pick up a fallen coconut and crack it open on a stone, drinking the water inside. It is cool and sweet. You decide to walk down to the beach to see what the tide has brought in. The descent is slippery, the wet gravel shifting under your boots. The shoreline has changed overnight. The sand is scoured smooth, erasing yesterday's footprints. Driftwood is piled high at the high tide mark, a tangle of bleached branches and seaweed. You walk slowly along the water's edge. The ocean is calm now, the waves rolling in with a lazy, apologetic rhythm. You spot something glinting in the sand. You bend down to pick it up. It is a piece of sea glass, frosted and green, a remnant of a bottle, perhaps tossed overboard years ago, now turned into a jewel by the sand and the sea. You put it in your pocket. You rub it with your thumb, feeling the smooth, worn edges. Further down the beach, you encounter a group of children collecting shells. They run in and out of the surf, shrieking with delight when the cold water touches their toes. They do not fear the ocean. To them, it is a playground, a vast mystery that brings treasures to their feet. You watch them for a while. One of them, a small boy, runs up to you and holds out a conch shell. It is pink and perfect. He wants you to listen to it. You take the shell and hold it to your ear. You hear the rushing sound, the echo of the deep. You smile and hand it back. He runs off to show his friends. You realize you have forgotten the terror of the sea. Seeing it through their eyes, it becomes innocent again. You return to the cottage as the day warms up. There is work to be done on the roof. The storm loosened a few of the palm thatches. You fetch a ladder and climb up. The view from the roof is commanding. You can see the whole sweep of the bay, the white caps of the waves, the small boats venturing out again to fish. You weave fresh fronds into the existing thatch, tying them down with twine. The sun beats on your back, hot and steady. Your hands move with the muscle memory of a sailor working the rigging. Not pull secure, not pull secure. It is the same motion, but the purpose is shelter, not speed. By late afternoon, the repair is finished. You sit on the edge of the roof for a moment, wiping sweat from your brow. A ship is entering the harbor. It is a large merchant brig, its sails billowing white against the blue. You watch it maneuver through the channel. You can see the tiny figures of the crew scrambling in the rigging. You know exactly what they are doing. You know the shouts, the strain of the ropes, the smell of the tar. But it feels distant, like watching a play. You are a spectator now. You climb down the ladder, your feet finding the solid earth with gratitude. That evening, a neighbor invites you for a meal. His name is Thomas, a former cooper who spent years making barrels for the Navy. He lives 2 cottages down. His home is filled with the smell of roasting pork and sage. You sit at a rough wooden table with his family. There is laughter and the clatter of plates. His wife serves a stew thick with root vegetables, yams and cassava dug from their own plot. The food is heavy and comforting. Thomas pours ale from a jug. You talk of the weather, of the storm, of the price of timber. You do not talk of cannon fire or boarding parties. The past is a shared shadow, acknowledged but left in the corner. The fire in Thomas's hearth burns low, casting a warm, orange glow over the room. His children are asleep on a rug in the corner. The conversation slows, settling into a comfortable silence. You finish your ale and stand to leave. The walk back to your cottage is guided by the light of the moon. The path is silver and black. Crickets sing in the tall grass, a chorus that rises and falls like a breath. You reach your door and pause, looking up at the stars. The Great Bear hangs low in the northern sky. You used to navigate by these stars, trusting your life to their position. Now they are simply beautiful. You enter your home and bolt the door. The cottage is still and quiet. You light the lantern again, the small flame pushing back the dark. You take a book from a shelf, a rare luxury you purchased in town weeks ago. It is a journal of botany, filled with drawings of ferns and flowers. You sit and turn the pages, studying the delicate ink lines. You are learning the names of the things that grow around you. You are learning the language of the land. Your eyes grow heavy. The excitement of the day, the physical labor, the sea air. It all pulls you towards sleep. You blow out the candle. The room plunges into darkness, but it is a soft darkness, wrapped in stone and safety. You lie down, pulling the quilt up to your chin. Outside, the wind whispers through the trees, a gentle lullaby that carries no threat. You close your eyes, and the ground holds you up, steady and sure. The seasons shift slowly in this latitude. The weeks of rain give way to a dry, golden period. The air loses its humidity, becoming crisp and clear. You wake early one morning to find a thin mist clinging to the valley floor. It swirls around the trunks of the trees like smoke. You dress warmly, putting on a wool vest over your shirt. Today is harvest day. The sweet potatoes you planted months ago are ready. You take a pitchfork from the shed. The metal is cold in your hand. You walk to the garden beds, the soil dark and rich. You drive the fork into the earth and turn it over. The soil crumbles away, revealing the reddish-purple skins of the tubers. You pull them from the ground, shaking off the dirt. They are heavy and solid. You fill a basket, then another. It is satisfying work, pulling sustenance directly from the ground. There is no middleman, no quartermaster rationing out shares. What you grow is yours. You work until the sun burns off the mist and the sweat runs down your back. You wipe your hands on your trousers, leaving streaks of fertile earth. Later, you carry the baskets down to the village. You are going to trade. You do not need gold. You need oil for your lamp, salt for your larder, perhaps a new shirt. You set up a small spot near the quay. You lay out your vegetables. People stop to look. A woman trades you a jar of pickled peppers for a handful of yams. A man offers a sack of dried beans for the rest. The exchange is simple and honest. You look at the people around you. Their faces are open, their hands rough with work. They are not waiting for a raid. They are simply living. With your trading done, you walk to the end of the pier. The water is glassy and calm. You sit on a piling, your legs dangling over the edge. Small fish dart around the pilings, flashing silver in the light. A pelican dives with a splash, emerging with a fish in its pouch. You watch it swallow and take flight again, heavy and graceful. You take a deep breath of the salt air. It fills your lungs, cleaning out the dust of the garden. You remember the taste of spray on a stormy night, but the memory is fading, losing its sharp edges. It is becoming a story you might tell someone else, rather than a life you are living. As the sun begins to set, painting the sky in shades of apricot and violet, you head back up the hill. Your basket is light now, filled with your new supplies. Smoke rises from the chimneys of the cottages, drifting straight up into the still air. You reach your gate and stop. Your orange trees are blooming again. Small white flowers star the dark foliage. The scent is overpowering, sweet and heavy. You reach out and touch a petal. It is soft as velvet. You realize that you have been here for a full cycle of seasons. You have seen the rain, the sun, the harvest. You have put down roots as surely as the trees. You enter the cottage and begin to prepare your evening meal. You chop the peppers you traded for, adding them to a pot of beans. The smell of cooking fills the small room. You hum a low tune, a slow rhythmic melody that used to be a hauling shanty. Now it is just a song for the kitchen. You eat by the light of the lantern, savoring the spice and the warmth. The cottage feels smaller tonight, cozier. The walls seem to wrap around you like a coat. After dinner, you sit by the window. The moon is rising, a giant yellow orb climbing out of the sea. It lays a path of glittering light across the water, a road of gold leading to the horizon. You trace the line with your eyes. You wonder where the ships are tonight, the ones sailing that silver road. You wish them fair winds, but you do not wish to be with them. You turn away from the window and look at your room. The fire is low. The night is quiet. The wind moves slowly through the eaves. You are home. The night passes without dreams. a deep and velvety blankness that restores the spirit. You wake before the sun, in that gray, hushed hour when the world is suspended between darkness and light. The air in the cottage is cool, carrying the faint scent of the dying fire. You swing your legs out of bed, your feet finding the familiar texture of the woven rug. There is no rush today. You pull on a thick knit sweater, the wool rough and warm against your skin. You open the door to the dawn. The mist lies heavy in the valley, a river of white cloud that obscures the ground. The tops of the palm trees float above it like islands in a ghostly sea. You stand on the threshold, a mug of hot tea in your hand, watching the white fog swirl and shift as the first pale light touches the sky. As the sun begins to burn through the mist, revealing the wet green of the grass, you gather your tools. Today, the work is at the water's edge, but not for sailing. You walk down the winding path to the small boathouse that leans against the rocks at the northern end of the cove. Inside, it smells of cedar shavings, turpentine, and old canvas. Your small skiff is pulled up on wooden rollers. It needs care. The salt is a relentless hunger, eating at varnish and wood alike. You run your hand along the gunwale, feeling for rough spots. You pick up a square of sandpaper. The sound of sanding is hypnotic, a dry, rhythmic shushing that fills the small space. Dust motes dance in the shafts of sunlight piercing the slat walls. You work slowly, smoothing the wood until it feels like glass under your fingertips. By mid-morning, the heat has returned, baking the sand outside the boathouse. You wipe the dust from your hands and walk toward the village center, taking the coastal route. The tide is out, exposing a wide ribbon of dark, packed sand. You walk past the fishermen cleaning their nets. They nod, a silent greeting of shared labor. You reach the village well, a circular stone structure shaded by a massive banyan tree. The air here is cooler, trapped by the dense canopy of leaves above. You lower the wooden bucket into the dark depths. The rope runs through your hands, smooth and worn. You hear the splash far below, echoing against the mossy stones. You turn the iron crank, the gears clicking softly, hauling the weight back up. The water is ice cold. You fill your canteen and splash some on your face. It is a shock of cold that wakes the senses completely. Near the well, a woman named Alara is setting up a loom. She weaves baskets and mats from dried palm fronds and seagrass. You stop to watch her hands work. They move with a speed that blurs over and under, twisting and tightening. The smell of the dried grass is sweet and hay-like. She tells you that the seagrass is thick this year, washed up in great piles by the recent storms. You sit on a bench nearby, listening to the soft rustle of the weaving. It is a sound of creation, distinct from the sounds of destruction you once knew. She offers you a small, tightly woven coaster. You accept it, placing a coin on her table. It is a fair exchange. The morning moves on, marked not by bells, but by the slow progress of the sun across the dappled ground. You leave the village and head inland, taking a trail that rises toward the limestone cliffs on the windward side of the island. The vegetation changes here. The lush palms give way to hardy scrub-brush and sea grapes, their round leaves tough and waxy to withstand the salt spray. The path is steep, forcing a slow, measured pace. You breathe deeply, the air filling your lungs with the scent of sage and salt. You reach the top of the cliff. The view opens up, vast and blue. Far below, the ocean crashes against the rocks, churning into white foam. But up here, the sound is distant, a low, continuous roar that underlies the wind. You find a flat rock and sit. You watch a frigate bird hang motionless in the airstream, its forked tail adjusting minutely to the currents. You are both observers, suspended above the world. The afternoon sun begins its descent, casting long shadows across the scrubland. You walk back down a different path, one that leads through a grove of mahogany trees. The light here is filtered, golden and dim. The ground is soft with layers of fallen leaves. You stop to collect some fallen branches, dry and brittle, perfect for kindling. You bundle them together with a length of twine you keep in your pocket. The wood smells spicy and rich. You carry the bundle on your shoulder, a pleasant weight. You pass a small stream that trickles over smooth gray stones. You pause to rinse the dust from your boots. The water is clear, hurrying toward the sea. You follow its course for a while, letting the sound of the running water guide you home. You arrive back at your cottage as the sky turns a deep, bruised purple. The first stars are beginning to prick through the twilight. You stack the kindling by the hearth, the wood clattering softly. You light the oil lamp on the table. The flame creates a pool of yellow light, pushing back the shadows in the corners. It is time to preserve the lemons you gathered days ago. You fetch the glass jars from the shelf. You slice the fruit, the knife cutting cleanly through the rind. The scent of citrus explodes in the room, sharp and clean. You pack the slices into the jars, layering them with coarse salt. You pour vinegar over them, watching the bubbles rise to the surface. You seal the lids tight. There is a deep satisfaction in this preparation, in storing the bounty of the summer against the leaner months to come. Dinner is simple tonight. A heel of bread, a slice of sharp cheese, and a few olives. You eat slowly, listening to the night sounds begin. The crickets start their chorus, a rising and falling rhythm that mimics the breath of the island. A gecko chirps from the ceiling beams. You finish your meal and wipe the crumbs from the table. You take a heavy, leather-bound ledger from a drawer. It is not a ship's log, recording battles and booty. It is a journal of the weather. You dip a quill into the inkwell. The scratch of the pen on paper is loud in the silence. You write down the wind direction, the clarity of the water, the feel of the air. Wind from the east. Sky clear. Barometer steady. You are documenting the peace. Later, you step out onto the porch to smoke a pipe. The tobacco glows orange in the bowl, a tiny ember in the dark. The smoke drifts up, curling into the night air. You look out toward the harbor. The lights of the village are extinguished, one by one. The world is going to sleep. You see the mast light of a single sloop anchored in the bay, bobbing gently. It reminds you of the old days, of the nervous energy of the night watch. But you feel no nerves now. Your heart beats slow and steady. You knock the ashes from your pipe against the railing. The sparks fall into the grass and die out instantly. You turn back to the door. The latch clicks shut. The bolt slides home. Inside, the room is warm. You bank the fire, covering the coals with ash to keep them slumbering until morning. The light in the room dims to a soft red glow. You undress and wash your face in the basin. The water is tepid and soothing. You lie down in the bed, the linen sheets cool against your skin. You stare up at the ceiling beams, tracing the grain of the wood in the semi-darkness. Your mind drifts over the day. The feel of the sandpaper, the smell of the mahogany grove, the taste of the lemon oil. These are the anchors of your life now. They hold you fast. The wind sighs around the eaves of the cottage. It is a gentle sound, a lullaby. You close your eyes, and the island holds you in its palm, suspended in the great, quiet ocean of the night. The next morning brings a shift in the wind. It comes from the north now, cooler and carrying the scent of rain. You wake to the sound of palm fronds tapping against the roof, a polite knocking that rouses you from sleep. You rise and dress in heavier trousers. Today is market day for the charcoal burners. They come down from the high forests only once a month. You want to meet them. You drink your tea standing by the window, watching the gray clouds race across the sky. The sea is choppy, flecked with whitecaps. It is a day for land, not water. You walk to the edge of the town where the charcoal burners set up their camp. The air here smells of wood smoke and earth. They are rough men, their skin stained dark by the soot of their trade, but their eyes are bright. They have brought mules laden with sacks of charcoal. You inspect the goods. The charcoal is black and lightweight, ringing like china when two pieces are struck together. This is good fuel, hot and clean burning. You negotiate for 2 sacks. The bargaining is low-voiced and respectful. You pay in silver, the coins shining bright against the blackened palms of the seller. He nods and hefts the sacks onto your cart. On the way back, you pass the small stone chapel that sits on a bluff overlooking the sea. The door is open. You are not a religious man, not in the traditional sense, but the quiet of the place draws you in. Inside, it is cool and dim. Candles flicker in red glass holders near the altar. There are no pews, just smooth stone benches. You sit for a moment. The stone radiates a chill that feels cleansing. You look at the stained glass window, simple geometric shapes of blue and green. The light filtering through paints the floor in colored pools. You do not pray. You simply sit in the stillness, letting your mind empty of thoughts. It is a different kind of silence than the boathouse or the forest. It is a silence that has been gathered and stored for 100 years. You leave the chapel and push your cart up the hill. The physical effort is good. It warms your muscles against the cooling wind. You reach your cottage and unload the charcoal into the dry shed. You stack the sacks neatly. You check the rest of your supplies. The woodpile is high. The rain barrel is full. The pantry is stocked. You are ready for whatever the changing season brings. You take a moment to oil the hinges of the shed door. The oil can is old, the brass tarnished, but the oil flows clear. The squeak vanishes, replaced by a smooth, silent swing. You wipe the excess oil with a rag. The afternoon turns toward evening, and the rain begins. It is a soft, steady drizzle that blurs the horizon. You decide to bake. You mix flour and water, a pinch of salt, a spoonful of honey. You knead the dough on the wooden table. The motion is repetitive and soothing. Push, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. The dough becomes elastic and smooth under your hands. You let it rest in a bowl covered with a cloth. You sit by the fire and read your botany book while the dough rises. You learn about the life cycle of the fern, how it spreads its spores in the damp earth. It is a quiet miracle, happening unseen in the forest floor. When the bread is baked, the cottage smells of yeast and warmth. You slice a piece while it is still hot, steam rising from the crumb. You spread butter on it, watching it melt into gold. You eat standing by the fire, listening to the rain deepen outside. It is a good life. It is a quiet life. The shadows lengthen in the room. You trim the wick of the lamp, the flame brightening for a moment before settling back. You are alone, but you are not lonely. The solitude is a cloak you wear comfortably now. The night deepens, wrapping the cottage in a wet, dark embrace. You are safe. You are home. The world turns slowly, and you turn with it, drifting toward rest. The rain stops sometime in the deep, unseen hours of the early morning. You sleep through the silence that follows, a heavy and dreamless rest anchored by the rhythmic sound of water dripping from the eaves. When you finally open your eyes, the light in the room is pale and washed clean. The air has changed completely. The heaviness of the storm is gone, replaced by a crisp, earthy freshness that smells of wet stone and renewed soil. You lie still for a moment, listening. The wind has dropped. The world outside is waiting. You push back the quilt and stand up. The floorboards are cool under your feet. You dress in your work clothes, the fabric softened by years of wear. You step out onto the porch. The world glitters. Every leaf in the garden holds a droplet of water, turning the morning sun into 1,000 tiny prisms. The ground is soft and dark, drinking in the moisture. You walk to the rain barrel at the corner of the house. It is full to the brim, the water surface dark and still as a mirror. You dip a ladle in, breaking the reflection. The water is cold and tastes of the sky. You drink deep. It is a simple wealth, this abundance of fresh water. In the old life, water was rationed, measured in thimbles and guarded with jealous eyes. Here, it falls from the heavens and waits for you. You splash your face, the cold shock waking you fully. The morning calls for a walk to the eastern shore. The storm will have churned up the seabeds, bringing new things to the tide pools. You take a canvas sack and a walking stick. The path is muddy today, winding through the dense green tunnel of the jungle. The ferns have unfurled in the night, reaching out across the trail. You brush past them, feeling the wetness on your legs. A parrot calls from the canopy, a flash of green and red against the blue sky. You walk with a steady, unhurried gait. There is no destination time, only the rhythm of your boots on the soft earth. The air is humid and rich with the scent of decay and growth, the eternal cycle of the forest. You emerge from the trees onto a rocky stretch of coast. The sand here is not white, but a dark, volcanic gray, studded with smooth black stones. The tide is low, retreating to reveal a landscape of shallow pools and exposed reef. You step carefully onto the rocks. They are slick with moss and salt. You peer into a large tide pool. The water is crystal clear, a perfect window into a miniature world. Anemones wave their colorful arms in the gentle current. Small fish, no bigger than your finger, dart into the shadows. You spot a cluster of mussels clinging to the underside of a ledge. You pry them loose with a small knife, dropping them into your sack. They make a hollow clacking sound as they hit the bottom. Further down the beach, the geography shifts. The rocks form shallow, flat basins that catch the high tide and hold it. These are the natural salt pans. The storm has filled them, but the hot sun is already beginning its work. You find one pan where the water has evaporated from days prior, leaving a crust of white crystals. You kneel on the dry stone. You scrape the salt up with a wooden spoon you brought for this purpose. The crystals are coarse and bright, shaped like tiny pyramids. You taste a grain. It is sharp and intense, the very essence of the ocean distilled into solid form. You fill a small pouch with the salt. It will season your soups for a month. This gathering feels ancient, a connection to every person who has ever lived by the sea. By noon, the sun is directly overhead, a white disk of heat. You leave the exposed beach and head toward the outskirts of the settlement. There is a small workshop here, set back from the road under the shade of a massive tamarind tree. It belongs to the indigo dyer. You smell the place before you see it, a scent that is earthy, fermented, and slightly sweet. You walk into the yard. Large clay vats are sunk into the ground, filled with dark, swirling liquid. The dyer, a man named Silas, is stirring one of the vats with a long pole. His arms are stained a deep, permanent blue, as if he has dipped them into the twilight. Silas nods as you approach. He does not stop his stirring. The rhythm is slow and hypnotic. The liquid in the vat is green, but he explains that the magic happens in the air. He pulls a length of cotton cloth from the dye. It emerges yellow-green, dripping onto the earth. As you watch, the air touches the fabric. The color shifts, deepening, turning from green to teal, and finally to a rich, dark blue. It is a slow transformation, a quiet alchemy. You bargain for a length of the finished cloth. You need a new curtain for your window. You trade a portion of your mussels and the salt. It is a good trade. You touch the dried blue cloth. It is stiff and smells of the plant. Feels durable. The heat of the afternoon drives you to seek shelter. You walk back toward your hill, but stop at a small grove of bamboo that grows near a stream. The bamboo is tall and straight, the leaves whispering with a dry, papery sound. The air inside the grove is green and cool. You find a flat spot of dry grass and sit down. You take out your knife and a piece of bamboo you cut earlier. You are making a flute. It is slow work, requiring patience. You carve the finger holes, turning the hollow stem in your hands. You blow across the top. A low, breathy note sounds. It is not perfect, but it is a start. You lean back against a stalk of bamboo. The world outside the grove is bright and hot, but here, shadows are long and restful. Your eyes close for a moment. You drift in the space between waking and sleeping, lulled by the running water of the stream. When you rouse, the light has shifted to the gold of late afternoon. You stand and stretch, your back popping softly. You pick up your sack and the blue cloth. The walk home is uphill, a gentle climb that warms your muscles again. You pass the village orchard. The trees are heavy with mangoes, their skins blushing red and yellow. The smell of ripe fruit hangs thick in the air, sweet and cloying. A few fruit bats are already beginning to stir, hanging upside down from the highest branches, wrapping their leathery wings around themselves. You watch them for a moment. They are creatures of the dusk, waiting for the sun to vanish. You feel a kinship with them. You, too, appreciate the quiet cover of the evening. You reach your cottage as the sun dips below the horizon. The sky is a canvas of violet and orange, the colors bleeding into the sea. You enter your home and place your treasures on the table. The mussels, the salt, the blue cloth. You light the fire in the hearth. Catches quickly, the dry wood snapping. You fill a pot with water and set it to boil. You scrub the mussels, watching the sand wash away. You drop them into the pot with a pinch of the new salt and a handful of wild herbs. The steam rises, smelling of the sea and the garden. You hang the blue cloth over the window. It blocks the darkness, turning the room inward, making it a contained world of warmth and light. While the meal cooks, you sit by the lantern to mend a fishing net. The twine is rough between your fingers. You find the holes, the broken meshes torn by coral or rock. You tie the knots swiftly, your hands remembering the motion from 1,000 days at sea. Loop, pull, tighten. Loop, pull, tighten. It is a meditation. The net grows whole again under your hands. You think of the fish it will catch, the meals it will provide. You are repairing your future, stitch by stitch. The fire crackles, a companionable sound in the quiet room. You eat your dinner from a wooden bowl. The mussels are tender, tasting of the ocean's salt and the earth's herbs. You sop up the broth with the bread you baked yesterday. It is a simple feast, but it fills you completely. After eating, you step outside one last time. The night is fully arrived. The air is cooler now, filled with the sound of tree frogs. You look toward the harbor. A lantern moves on the deck of a distant ship, swinging like a pendulum. You watch it for a long time. You do not wish to be there. You are content to be the watcher on the hill. You return inside and bar the door. The sound of the bolt sliding home is a final punctuation mark on the day. You extinguish the lantern. The room plunges into shadow, illuminated only by the dying embers of the fire. You undress in the dark, the air cool on your skin. You slide into bed, pulling the heavy quilt up to your chin. The mattress is firm, the pillow soft. You let your weight sink into the bed. Your breathing slows, matching the rhythm of the wind outside. The bamboo flute sits on the table, waiting for tomorrow. The blue cloth hangs at the window, guarding your rest. The darkness is warm. The breath is slow. The night is quiet. The next morning, the wind has turned again, blowing gently from the south. It brings a humidity that softens the edges of the furniture and makes the stone walls sweat. You wake early, feeling the moisture in the air. You dress in light linen, rolling the sleeves up to your elbows. Today is a day for the clay pit. You need a new water jar. The old one has developed a hairline crack, weeping a slow tear of water onto the floor. You eat a mango for breakfast, peeling the skin back with your knife. The fruit is sweet and messy, the juice running over your fingers. Tastes of sunshine and rain. You take the path that leads inland, away from the sea, toward the riverbank where the clay is thick and gray. The walk takes you through a grove of cedar trees. The bark is rough and smells of resin. The ground is covered in needles that silence your footsteps. You walk like a ghost through the trees. You spot a lizard sunning itself on a rock, its throat pulsing blue. It watches you pass with an unblinking golden eye. You do not disturb it. You are just another animal in the woods, moving with purpose. You reach the riverbank. The water is slow and brown here, moving lazily toward the estuary. The bank is steep and muddy. You roll up your trousers and step into the mud. It is cool and sucks at your feet. You find a vein of good clay, smooth and free of rocks. You dig it out with a spade, piling the heavy, wet clumps onto a canvas sheet. The smell is mineral and old, the smell of the river bottom. You work until you have a mound of clay enough for 3 jars. You wrap the canvas tight, making a heavy bundle. You hoist it onto your shoulder. The weight is substantial, grounding you to the earth. On the walk back, you stop at the clearing of the charcoal burners again. But this time, you do not buy. You simply sit on a log and share a pipe with the old man who tends the kiln. He tells you stories of the forest, of the jaguar that was seen near the waterfall, of the trees that bleed red sap. You listen quietly. You tell him a story of the sea, of a wave as high as a house and the whale that sang beneath the hull. He nods, accepting the trade of words. It is a fair exchange, forest for ocean, earth for water. The smoke from your pipes drifts up together, mingling in the still air. You return to your cottage and set up a work table on the porch. You unpack the clay. You knead it, working out the air bubbles, slamming it down onto the wood. The rhythmic thumping echoes off the stone walls. You begin to coil the clay, building the walls of the jar. Round and round, pinching and smoothing. The shape rises under your hands. It is a belly, a neck, a lip. You smooth the sides with a wet stone, erasing your fingerprints. You make the jar wide at the bottom for stability, narrow at the top to keep the water cool. You step back to admire it. It is simple and honest. You set it in the shade to dry slowly. The afternoon brings a gentle rain, a sun shower that falls while the sky is still blue. You sit on the porch, watching the rain hiss on the hot stones of the path. You sharpen your tools while you wait. The wet stone makes a rasping sound against the steel of your knife. You test the edge on your thumb. It bites. You oil the blade and slide it back into its sheath. The rain stops as quickly as it began. The earth steams, a mist rising from the warm ground. You decide to visit the lighthouse keeper. The lighthouse sits on the jagged point of the headland, a mile away. The walk is bracing, the wind always stronger on the point. You climb the winding stairs of the tower. The keeper, a man named Elias, no, a different Elias, older with a beard like white wire, is polishing the great lens. The glass is thick and curved, magnifying the world. He welcomes you. You stand on the gallery, looking out at the vast, curved horizon. You can see a squall line far out to sea, a curtain of gray rain connecting cloud to water. It is moving away. You feel small up here, a speck on the edge of the continent. The wind whips your hair. It is a clean, wild feeling. You descend as the sun begins to set. The walk home is downhill, guided by the first stars. You reach your garden gate. The night flowers are opening, white trumpets that release their perfume only in the dark. You stop to smell them. The scent is heavy and sweet, almost narcotic. You go inside. You are tired in a good way, a weariness of the muscles, not the spirit. You do not light the fire tonight. The air is warm enough. You eat cold bread and cheese. You drink water from a tin cup. You lie in your bed, listening to the island settle. A night bird calls, a lonely, haunting sound. You think of the clay jar drying on the porch, of the salt in the pouch, of the blue cloth on the window. These are your anchors. You are no longer drifting. You are held fast by the things you have made and the things you have gathered. The darkness is soft. The silence is deep. You close your eyes, and the rhythm of the waves beats a slow, steady time against the shore, measuring out the peace of the night. The dawn arrives with a gentle, gray light that filters through the blue cloth hanging at your window. It is a soft awakening, devoid of the sharp bugle calls or the shouting of a bosun that once defined your mornings. You lie still for a moment, listening to the world wake up. A rooster crows in the distance, a lonely, ragged sound that is answered by another, further down the valley. You slide out from the warmth of the quilt. The air in the cottage is cool and still. You dress quietly, pulling on trousers that are stiff with dried clay from yesterday's labor. You step out onto the porch. The clay jar you shaped sits on the railing, drying in the morning air. It has turned a lighter shade of gray, the moisture evaporating into the night. You touch it carefully. It is firm, holding its shape against your hand. It is ready for the next step, but that can wait. You walk past the garden, where the soil is dark and damp, toward the edge of the forest where the land begins to rise. Here, in a clearing shaded by wild hibiscus trees, you keep your hives. The wooden boxes are painted white to reflect the heat of the tropical sun. As you approach, the air begins to hum. It is a low, vibrational sound, the collective song of thousands of wings. You pull a veil of fine mesh over your hat and light the smoker. The burlap inside smolders, producing a cool, thick smoke that smells of earth and burnt grass. You puff the smoke gently into the entrance of the first hive. The hum changes pitch, becoming deeper, calmer. The bees retreat, moving slowly over the comb. You lift the lid of the box. The The scent of warm wax and honey rises up, sweet and floral, overpowering the smell of the smoke. It is the distilled essence of the island's blooms, mango, citrus, and wild orchid. You lift out a frame, heavy with amber liquid. The bees crawl over your gloved hands, gentle and unbothered. You use a knife to scrape away the wax cappings, revealing the honey underneath. It glistens like liquid gold in the dappled sunlight. You do not take much, just a single frame. It is a tithe, a sharing of the labor. You replace the lid and step back, removing your veil. The hum fades behind you as you walk back down the path, the frame heavy in your hands. By mid-morning, the sun has burned off the lingering mist, and the day turns bright and clear. You carry the honey into the kitchen and leave it to drain through a cheesecloth into a ceramic bowl. It is time to go to the village. You need iron nails for the garden gate. You walk down the familiar track, the gravel crunching under your boots. The ocean to your left is a brilliant turquoise, calm and flat. A small fishing boat sits motionless on the water, its sail hanging slack. The men aboard are mending nets, their voices carrying over the water with surprising clarity. You wave, and one of them raises a hand in return. You reach the blacksmith's forge at the edge of the settlement. The building is open on three sides to catch the breeze, but the heat radiating from the center is intense. The smith, a man named Corin with arms like knotted oak, is hammering a piece of red-hot iron on the anvil. Clang, clang, clang. The sound is rhythmic and slow, a heartbeat of industry. Sparks fly like captured stars, dying on the dirt floor. You stand in the shade watching the metal change shape. It moves from a glowing orange bar to a flattened hinge under the force of the hammer. Corin plunges the metal into a bucket of water. It hisses violently, sending up a cloud of steam that smells of sulfur and wet iron. You purchase a small bag of square-cut nails. They are rough to the touch, still warm from the forge. You put them in your pocket, feeling their weight against your hip. Leaving the forge, you walk toward the harbor wall. The stone is warm where the sun hits it. You sit for a moment watching the tide come in. It creeps up the pilings, inch by inch, swallowing the barnacles and the green weed. A sea turtle surfaces near the wall, exhaling a puff of air with a sound like a sigh. It paddles lazily, its shell a mosaic of brown and gold, before diving back into the shadowy depths. You watch the ripples fade. There is no hurry here. The turtle has nowhere to be, and neither do you. The afternoon brings a shift in the weather. Large, billowing cumulus clouds begin to stack up over the mountains in the interior, turning the light a soft, diffused white. You decide to walk inland, following the course of the river upstream. The path here is narrow, lined with ferns that brush against your legs. The air becomes cooler, smelling of moss and damp stone. You are heading for the old mill ruins. It is a place of quiet history, a remnant of a settlement that failed a century ago. The stone walls are overgrown with creeping vines, the roof long gone, open to the sky. You reach the ruins and step through the arched doorway. The floor is covered in a carpet of soft grass. A large fig tree has taken root in what was once the main hall, its roots flowing over the stones like slow-moving wax. It is a cathedral of nature. You sit on a fallen lintel stone. The silence here is profound, insulated by the thick stone walls. You can hear the river rushing nearby, a constant white noise that washes away thought. You close your eyes, leaning your head back against the cool masonry. You imagine the people who built this, laying stone upon stone, hoping for permanence. The forest has reclaimed it, but the peace remains. As the light begins to fail, turning the gray stone to violet, you start the walk back. You follow the river down, watching it widen and slow as it approaches the sea. You pass a grove of bamboo, the tall stalks clicking together in the gentle breeze. Click-clack, click-clack. It sounds like a wooden wind chime. You pause to cut a fresh shoot, thinking of the flute you started. The wood is green and tough. You tuck it into your belt. The first fireflies are beginning to blink in the undergrowth, tiny drifting sparks of yellow-green light. You arrive at your cottage as the evening settles in. The clouds have moved off to the west, leaving a clear strip of indigo sky. You light the oil lamp, the flame steady and comforting. You go to the kitchen. The honey has drained into the bowl, a pool of dark, viscous sweetness. You dip a finger in, tastes of wildflowers and sun. You prepare your supper. You rub a river fish with salt and glaze it with the honey. You wrap it in a banana leaf and place it in the embers of the hearth. The smell of the cooking fish and the sweet caramelizing honey fills the small room. While the fish cooks, you take the bag of nails from your pocket. You lay them out on the table, counting them. 12 nails, 12 pieces of iron to hold the wood together. You take a piece of sandpaper and smooth the rough edges of the bamboo shoot you cut. The work is small and focused. Your hands, once used to wielding a cutlass and hauling heavy cannon, now move with precision and gentleness. You are building, not destroying. The fire crackles, shifting the logs. You use a poker to adjust the embers, sending a shower of sparks up the chimney. You eat your meal at the wooden table. The fish is tender, the sweetness of the honey balancing the salt of the sea. You drink a cup of tea brewed from lemon verbena leaves plucked from the garden. The steam warms your face. Outside, the wind has picked up slightly, rustling the thatch of the roof. It is a familiar sound, one that used to signal the need to check the anchor line. Now, it just means the night will be cool. You finish your tea and wash the plate in a basin of water. You step out onto the porch for a final look at the night. The moon has risen, a waxing gibbous that casts a silver path across the ocean. The waves are breaking gently on the reef, a distant, white line of foam. You can see the dark outline of your hives against the trees at the top of the garden. The bees are sleeping, clustering together for warmth. You think of the clay jar drying in the dark. You think of the nails waiting for the gate. Everything has its place. Everything has its time. You go back inside and bolt the door. The cottage feels secure, a hollow of light in the vast darkness. You extinguish the lamp. The wick glows red for a second, then fades to gray smoke. You undress in the moonlight that spills through the window. You lie down, pulling the sheet up. The mattress conforms to your body. You take a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the dried lavender you keep in a sachet by the pillow. Your muscles relax, heavy and loose. The day's walk, the heat of the forge, the silence of the ruins. It all settles into a quiet memory. You close your eyes. The earth turns slowly beneath you. The sea breathes in and out. You drift away, carried on the slow, steady current of sleep. The next morning, the sun arrives with a brilliance that demands attention. The sky is a hard, polished blue, without a single cloud to mar its surface. You wake feeling rested, the deep sleep of the island having done its work. You dress in light cotton, rolling your sleeves up past your elbows. Today is a day for the water. You eat a slice of papaya, the fruit soft and orange, scooping the seeds out with a spoon. You drink cool water from the clay pitcher. You walk down to the boathouse. The tide is high, the water lapping against the wooden ramp. You push your skiff down the rollers. It slides easily into the water, floating with a gentle bob. You step in and take up the oars. They are balanced and familiar in your hands. You push off from the shore. The only sound is the dip, pull, swirl of the oars and the trickle of water off the blades. You row out past the headland, leaving the village behind. The water here is deep and clear, so clear you can see the shadow of your boat on the sand bottom 30 feet below. You are heading for the small, uninhabited cay that lies a mile offshore. It is a spit of white sand and scrub brush, surrounded by a coral reef. You row with a steady rhythm, your back and shoulders working in unison. The physical exertion feels good, clears the mind. You reach the quay and pull the boat up onto the sand. It grates softly. You tie the painter line to a piece of driftwood half buried in the sand. You are alone here. The only inhabitants are the terns nesting in the grass and the crabs scuttling sideways into their holes. You walk the perimeter of the island. Takes only 20 minutes. You find a large conch shell, bleached white by the sun. It's spiral perfect and unbroken. You pick it up, shaking out the sand. It is heavy and solid. You place it in your boat. You wade into the shallow water of the lagoon. It is warm as bath water. You float on your back, looking up at the endless blue sky. The water supports you completely. You feel weightless, suspended between the sea and the air. The silence is broken only by the cry of a gull and the gentle lap of the waves against the shore. By early afternoon, the sun is hot on your face. You row back to the main island, the current helping you along. You land the boat and haul it up the ramp. You walk back through the village. It is siesta time. The streets are empty. Shutters are closed against the heat. A dog sleeps in the shade of a porch, twitching its paws in a dream. You walk quietly, respecting the hush. You pass the open door of the bakery. The ovens are cold now, but the smell of yeast lingers. You return to your cottage and sit on the porch in the shade. You take the bamboo shoot you cut yesterday and your knife. You begin to work on it again, scraping the skin, smoothing the nodes. You are making a trellis for the passion fruit vine that is growing wild near the rain barrel. You cut the bamboo into lengths and use twine to lash them together. The work is repetitive and calm, not twist-pull. The grid takes shape under your hands. You stand it up against the wall of the house. It is simple and strong. As evening approaches, the heat breaks. A cool breeze comes off the mountain, carrying the scent of pine and wet earth. You walk to the garden and inspect the vegetables. The tomatoes are ripening, turning from green to a pale orange. You pull a few weeds that have sprung up after the rain, the roots coming free easily from the damp soil. You water the herbs, the water turning the dust to dark mud. The scent of basil and mint rises up, sharp and green. You decide to visit the old lighthouse keeper, Elias, again. You walk the cliff path as the sun begins to set. The sky turns a fiery red, reflecting off the ocean. Elias is sitting on the bench outside the tower, smoking a pipe. He nods as you approach. You sit beside him. You do not speak for a long time. You just watch the sun dip below the horizon. The green flash visible for a split second before the light is gone. Elias knocks his pipe out against his boot. "Wind's changing," he says softly. "Going to be a calm night." You nod. You trust his reading of the sky. You walk back by starlight. The path is faint, a pale ribbon in the dark. You know the way by heart now. You reach your gate. The house is dark, waiting for you. You go inside and light a single candle. You place the white conch shell on the shelf next to the blue cloth and the clay jar. It glows in the candlelight, a piece of the wild ocean brought indoors. You eat a piece of bread and cheese, standing by the window. You watch the lighthouse beam sweep across the water. Flash, darkness, flash, darkness. It is a steady, reassuring rhythm. You prepare for bed. You wash your hands, scrubbing away the salt and the garden soil. You lie down. The sheets are cool. You listen to the night sounds. The wind in the palms, the distant surf, the creak of the cooling roof. Your body is tired, but your mind is at peace. You are safe. You are home. The island cradles you. The ocean guards you. You drift into sleep, deep and slow and dreamless. The morning rain arrives before the sun. A gentle, drumming percussion on the thatched roof that pulls you slowly from the depths of sleep. It is not a storm, just the steady, warm breath of the tropics washing the island clean. You lie in the gray light, listening to the water traverse the woven palm fronds above, channeling into streams that fall to the earth. The air in the room is humid and rich, carrying the scent of wet stone and green leaves. You rise and open the shutters. The world outside is a blurred watercolor of greens and grays. The rain creates a curtain of mist off the porch, enclosing your home in a private, quiet sphere. You light the small stove to boil water for tea. The hiss of the kettle joins the rhythm of the rain. By the time you finish your first cup, the rain has stopped as suddenly as it began. The sun breaks through the retreating clouds, turning the wet world into a glittering landscape of light. Steam begins to rise from the wooden railings of the porch. You dress in your sturdy boots, for the path will be soft today. You take the clay jar you made, now dry and fired in a neighbor's kiln days ago, and place it by the door. It is a vessel waiting to be filled. You walk out into the garden. The soil is dark and spongy. The plants look revived, their leaves turgid and bright. You check the trellis you built. The passion fruit vine has already begun to reach out, its tendrils curling around the bamboo supports in tight, green spirals. You leave the garden and head down the muddy track toward the village cooperage. You need a new bucket for the well, and Thomas, the cooper, is the master of bending wood. The air smells of damp earth and the sweet rot of fallen fruit. You pass the village laundry area, where large stone basins are filled with rainwater. Two women are scrubbing linens, their laughter mixing with the splash of water. They nod as you pass. You walk on, the mud squelching softly under your soles. The village is waking up to the sun. Shutters are thrown open. A shopkeeper sweeps water from his threshold with a broom made of twigs. The cooperage is a large, open-sided shed near the edge of the forest. The floor is covered in a thick layer of sawdust that muffles your footsteps. The air here smells of oak, pine, and hot iron. Thomas is working at his shaving horse, clamping a stave of white oak in place. He uses a draw knife to shape the wood, pulling the blade toward him with a rhythmic shhh sound. Long curls of wood fall to the floor. You watch him for a moment. He does not look up, lost in the meditation of the grain. He is shaping the wood to fit a curve that exists only in his mind. You step forward and he smiles, setting down the knife. You point to the bucket you need. He nods and points to a stack of finished vessels in the corner. You select one, testing its weight. It is solid, the staves fitted so tightly they look like a single piece of wood. Leaving the cooperage with your new bucket, you decide to take the long route home, climbing the ridge that runs along the spine of the island. The path is steep and rocky, winding through a grove of mahogany trees. The canopy is dense here, blocking out the direct sun. The light is green and filtered. You walk slowly, letting your breathing adjust to the climb. You spot a blue land crab scuttling into a hole beneath a root. You pause to watch it. It is cautious, waving its claws before disappearing into the dark earth. You continue up. The trees thin out as you reach the high pasture. The grass here is tall and golden, waving in the trade winds. In the pasture, you encounter a herd of goats grazing on the scrub. They are watched by a young boy sitting on a rock, whittling a stick. The bells around the goats' necks make a chaotic, gentle music. Clink clonk, clink clonk. The boy waves his knife in greeting. You stop to rest, looking out over the island. From this height, you can see the reef, a ring of turquoise separating the deep indigo of the ocean from the calm lagoon. You see the white line of the surf. You see the red roofs of the village. It is a map of your world, laid out in silence. You breathe the cooler air of the high ground, tastes of salt and dry grass. You descend the other side of the ridge, moving toward a hidden cove known for its driftwood. The path down is loose shale, sliding under your boots. You move with care. You reach the beach. It is different from the harbor. Here, the ocean comes in direct, rolling heavy stones in the surf. The sound is a deep, grinding roar. You walk the tide line. You are looking for a specific shape of wood, something weathered and gray for a shelf in your kitchen. You find a piece of teak, likely from a ship's deck, smoothed by years in the water to a silver satin finish. It is heavy and dense. You tuck it under your arm. The afternoon heat drives you toward the shade of the village square. You stop at the fruit stand run by an old woman named Morella. Her stall is a riot of color: yellow bananas, green plantains, red peppers. She is cutting a pineapple with a machete, the blade slicing effortlessly through the tough skin. She offers you a slice. The juice is warm and incredibly sweet, stinging your lips. You buy a hand of bananas and a bag of peppers. You sit on a bench in the square, watching the slow commerce of the afternoon. A dog sleeps in the dust. A cart rolls by, the wooden wheels creaking. Time seems to stretch here, unmeasured by clocks. You walk back to the harbor to check on your skiff. The tide is coming in, lifting the boats off the sand. You check the knot on your painter line. It is secure. You bail a few inches of rainwater from the bottom of the boat using a scoop made from a gourd. The water splashes back into the sea. You run your hand along the gunnel. The varnish is holding up against the sun. You watch a pelican dive into the harbor waters, hitting the surface with a splash. It emerges a moment later, swallowing its catch. The cycle continues. You turn back toward the hill. The climb home is familiar. Your boots know every stone, every root. You reach your gate as the light begins to turn golden. You enter the cottage and place the teak wood on the table. You fill the new bucket with water from the rain barrel and bring it inside. You place the bananas in a bowl. The room feels full. You light the fire not for heat, but to cook. You chop the peppers you bought, the sharp scent filling the air. You toss them into a pan with some oil and onions. The sound of the sizzling is loud in the quiet room. Dinner is eaten on the porch, watching the sunset. The sky turns a bruised purple, then a deep, starry black. The air cools rapidly. You wrap a blanket around your shoulders. You watch the first stars appear. Venus hangs low and bright in the west. You think of the navigation charts you once memorized, the stars that guided you across emptiness. Now they are just beautiful lights. You finish your meal and take the dishes inside. You wash them in the new bucket, the wood smelling of wet oak. You sit by the lamp to work on the teak wood. You sand it gently, bringing out the grain. The wood is dark and rich. You can smell the history in it, the salt and the tar of its previous life. You hum a low tune, a melody without words. The rhythm of the sanding matches the rhythm of the waves you can hear in the distance. Shuk-shuk. It is a peaceful sound. You wipe the wood with a cloth dipped in oil. It gleams under the lamplight. The night deepens. The village lights go out one by one. You step outside for a final breath of air. The moon is hidden behind a cloud, making the darkness absolute. The sounds of the island are amplified. The wind in the palms, the distant surf, the cry of a night heron. You feel the solitude wrapping around you like a coat. It is not lonely. It is spacious. You go back inside and bolt the door. You extinguish the lamp. The wick glows, then dies. You lie in the dark, listening to the silence. You are safe. You are home. The island sleeps, and you sleep with it. The next morning, the wind shifts to the east, bringing a steady, cooling breeze. You wake early, energized. Today is the day to visit the salt ponds again, but first you must tend to the chickens. You walk to the coop at the back of the garden. The hens are clucking softly, waiting for you. You scatter grain on the ground. They peck eagerly. You reach into the nesting boxes, feeling for the warm, smooth shapes of the eggs. You find 3 brown eggs and 1 white one. You place them carefully in your pocket. The feathers are soft against your hand. You walk down to the shore, but this time you head north, toward the rocky headland. The path follows the cliff edge. The wind is stronger here, whipping your hair back. You can see the whitecaps on the ocean, rows of soldiers marching toward the land. You reach the salt pans. The sun has been hot for days, and the water has evaporated, leaving thick crusts of crystal. You use a wooden scraper to gather the salt into mounds. It glitters in the sun. You fill a canvas sack. It is heavy, dense with the mineral wealth of the sea. Walking back, you meet the net mender again, sitting on a rock near the path. He is working on a cast net, the fine mesh spread out over his knees. You stop to talk. He tells you the mackerel are running near the point. He points to the flock of birds diving offshore. You nod. You offer him an egg from your pocket. He accepts it with a smile, carefully placing it in his own bag. It is a small exchange, but it binds you to the community. You walk on, the sack of salt heavy on your shoulder. You reach the village bakery as the oven is being opened. The smell of yeast and toasted flour flows out into the street. You step inside. The warmth is immediate. You trade a bag of your coarse salt for a loaf of dark rye bread. The baker tells you a joke about a sailor and a parrot. You laugh, the sound rusty in your throat. You break a piece of the bread and eat it as you walk. It is warm and dense, filling your belly. You return to your cottage in the afternoon stillness. The wind has died down. The air is still and hot. You sit on the porch and take out the bamboo flute you started. You use a small round file to smooth the finger holes. You blow a note. It is clear and true. You try a scale. The notes float out into the garden, mixing with the buzz of the bees. You play a slow, simple melody, one you remember from a tavern in a port you can't recall. The music feels like a bridge to the past, but a safe one. As the sun lowers, you decide to gather firewood. You walk to the edge of the forest where a storm brought down a cedar branch months ago. The wood is dry and gray. You use a small hatchet to chop it into manageable lengths. The sound of the chopping echoes in the trees. Thwack, thwack. The wood splits easily, revealing the red heartwood. The The smell of cedar is strong and spicy. You stack the wood in your arms and carry it back to the house. You pile it neatly by the door. Evening comes with a wash of pink light. You light the fire in the hearth. You place a skillet over the flames. You crack the remaining eggs into the pan. They sizzle and turn white. You slice the rye bread and toast it on a stone near the fire. You sit at the table and eat. The yolk is rich and yellow. The bread is crunchy. It is a meal of the land. After dinner, you sit by the window with your botany book. You study the drawing of a sea grape leaf. You trace the veins with your finger. You are learning the names of the things that surround you. Coccoloba uvifera. The Latin words feel heavy and important in your mouth. You whisper them. Outside, the crickets begin their nightly song. You close the book. You blow out the lamp. You lie down in the dark. The day is done. The work is finished. You close your eyes and let the rhythm of the island carry you into sleep. The morning arrives not with light, but with sound. The bamboo wind chimes you hung yesterday begin to knock together. A hollow, wooden melody that signals the shifting of the trade winds. You open your eyes. The room is filled with a cool, blue shadow. You lie still for a moment, letting the music of the bamboo ground you in the present. You rise and walk to the window. The sky is a pale, washed-out denim, cloudless and vast. The palm fronds in the garden are swaying rhythmically, bowing to the east. It is a dry wind, carrying the scent of salt and cured tobacco from the fields across the valley. You dress in your work clothes, the fabric soft and familiar against your skin. You step out onto the porch to wash. The water in the basin is cool. You cup it in your hands, splashing your face, scrubbing away the last heaviness of sleep. You dry off with a rough linen towel. Breakfast is simple today. You take the last of the rye bread, slicing it thick, and cover it with the honey you harvested from the hives. The sweetness is sharp and floral, a burst of energy. You eat standing up, watching a yellow finch land on the railing. It chirps once, flashes its bright wings, and dives back into the garden. You brush the crumbs from your shirt. The day has begun. The task for the morning lies in the coconut grove on the south side of the ridge. You take a canvas sack and a machete. The walk is easy, downhill through tall guinea grass that brushes against your thighs with a dry, swishing sound. The grove is older than the village, a cathedral of tall, leaning trunks that curve toward the sun. The ground is covered in a thick mat of brown fronds and fallen nuts. The light here is dappled and shifting, filtering through the high canopy. You walk slowly, scanning the ground. You are looking for the dry, brown nuts that have fallen naturally. These are the ones ready for oil. You gather the coconuts, weighing each one in your hand. You shake them. If they slosh, they are good. If they are silent, they are too dry. You fill the sack, the weight growing heavy on your shoulder. You find a spot to sit, a flat rock in the shade. It is time to husk them. You set up a sharpened stake in the ground. You bring the coconut down on the point, tearing away the thick, fibrous husk. Rip, tear, pull. The sound is satisfyingly destructive. The fibers are tough, resisting your hands, but you find the rhythm. One by one, you strip the nuts down to their hard, hairy shells. You pile the husks to the side. They will make excellent fuel for the smoker or bedding for the garden paths. With the husks removed, you carry the cleaned nuts back up the hill. The sun is higher now, warm on your back. You reach the cottage and set up a workspace on the shady side of the porch. You crack the shells open with a precise tap of the machete. The clear water spills into a bowl, a refreshing drink for later. The meat inside is stark white and thick. You sit on a low stool and begin to grate the meat. The grater is a piece of punch tin nailed to a board. Scrape, scrape, scrape. The white flakes pile up like snow in the tropical heat. The air fills with the rich, milky scent of the coconut. It is a slow process, hypnotic and repetitive. Your hands move without conscious thought. By noon, you have a mound of grated coconut. You move to the kitchen. You build up the fire in the hearth, feeding it with the cedar kindling you chopped. You place a large iron pot over the flames. You squeeze the milk from the grated meat, wringing it out in a cloth until only dry chaff remains. You pour the thick, white milk into the pot. As it heats, it begins to bubble gently. You stir it with a wooden spoon. The goal is to boil away the water, leaving only the pure, clear oil. The kitchen smells sweet and heavy, like a bakery. You watch the steam rise, curling up into the thatch. The liquid separates, the curds browning and sinking to the bottom, the oil floating to the top. While the oil simmers, you step out to the garden to check the herbs. The heat of the day is at its peak. The lizards are sunning themselves on the stone wall, motionless as statues. You pick a few sprigs of rosemary and thyme, bruising the leaves to release their scent. You will infuse a small bottle of the oil with these herbs for cooking. The rest will be for lamps or trading. You return to the pot. The transformation is complete. You ladle the clear oil into glass bottles, corking them tight. The remaining brown curds, the sweet bits, you save in a small bowl. They are a treat, tasting of toasted caramel. The afternoon calls for a change of scenery. You pack 2 bottles of the fresh oil into a basket and head toward the mangroves on the western shore. The path winds through a marshy area where the ground is soft and black. The air here smells of sulfur and brine, a primordial scent. The mangroves stand on their tangled roots like dancers on stilts, hovering above the water. It is a place of deep stillness. The water is dark and reflective, mirroring the twisted branches. You walk along a wooden boardwalk built by the fishermen to access their crab traps. The boards creak softly under your boots. You are looking for Old Man Silas, the crabber. He lives in a hut raised on pilings above the mudflats. You find him mending a trap, weaving wire mesh with pliers. He looks up, his eyes disappearing into the wrinkles of a smile. You offer him a bottle of the oil. He nods his thanks and points to a bucket of blue crabs, freshly caught and clicking their claws. He offers you 3 large ones. You wrap them in wet newspaper and place them in your basket. You sit with him for a while, saying nothing. You watch a white heron stalk through the shallows, lifting its feet with impossible grace. The silence between you is comfortable, born of years of shared geography. Leaving the mangroves, you walk back along the beach. The tide is coming in, pushing the waves higher up the sand. You take off your boots and walk barefoot, letting the water rush over your feet. It is cool and soothing. You find a piece of driftwood, smoothed by the ocean into the shape of a perfect curve. You pick it up. Feels like bone, light and dry. You put it in your pocket. You pass a group of children flying a kite made of paper and bamboo. The kite dances in the trade wind, a red diamond against the blue sky. You watch it dip and soar, tethered to the earth by a thin string. You return to the cottage as the light begins to turn golden. The sun is dropping toward the horizon, painting the clouds in shades of apricot and violet. You rinse the crabs at the outdoor basin. You light the fire again, bringing a pot of seawater to a boil. You drop the crabs in, adding the herbs you picked earlier. The shell turns a brilliant orange red. You eat on the porch, cracking the claws with a small wooden mallet. The meat is sweet and tender, tasting of the sea. You dip it in the remaining coconut curds, a strange but delicious combination of salt and sweet. After dinner, the wind dies down. The air becomes still and heavy. You light the oil lamp, filling the reservoir with the fresh coconut oil you made today. The flame is bright and clean, burning without smoke. The room fills with a warm, yellow glow. You take the teak wood you have been working on and place it on the table. You dip a rag into the oil and rub it into the wood. The grain pops, darkening and deepening, revealing hidden swirls of color. You work the oil in with slow, circular motions. The wood drinks it up. It feels alive under your hand, warm and smooth. You decide to write in your ledger. You record the harvest, 12 coconuts, 2 bottles of oil, 3 crabs traded. It is a record of a simple life, but it matters. You note the wind direction and the sighting of the heron. You dip the quill, the scratch of the nib loud in the quiet room. You pause to look at the blue cloth hanging in the window. It is dark now, opaque against the night. You feel a deep sense of enclosure, of being held safe within these 4 walls. The fatigue of the day begins to settle in your shoulders. It is a good weight, the heaviness of use. You close the ledger and cap the inkwell. You blow out the lamp. The scent of the extinguished wick hangs in the air for a moment, nostalgic and sharp. You walk to the window and open the shutters. The moon is high now, a bright lantern in the sky. It illuminates the garden, turning the leaves to silver. You can hear the distant crash of the surf on the reef, a rhythmic lullaby that never ceases. You undress and wash your face in the dark. The water is tepid. You lie down in your bed. The sheets are cool and smell of lavender. You stretch out your legs, feeling the muscles release. You think of the grove, of the light filtering through the palm fronds. You think of the oil clear and golden in the bottle. You think of the kite dancing in the wind. These images drift through your mind, soft and unhurried. The world is turning. The island is floating. You are anchored. You close your eyes, and the darkness comes to greet you, soft and welcoming. The next morning, the air is misty and cool. A low fog clings to the valleys, softening the edges of the trees. You wake slowly, lingering in the warmth of the bed. Today is a day for the high forest. You need cedar bark for weaving. You dress in your warmest shirt and heavy boots. You eat a bowl of porridge, hot and filling, standing by the fire. You pack a flask of water and a small knife. You step out into the mist. Feels like walking into a cloud. The sounds of the village are muffled, distant, and indistinct. You take the path that leads straight up the mountain. The incline is steep. Your breath comes in steady puffs of white steam. The vegetation changes as you climb. The palms give way to pines and ferns. The air smells of resin and damp needles. You reach the cedar grove. The trees are ancient, their trunks massive and red. You approach a fallen tree, its bark peeling away in long strips. You carefully peel the bark free, rolling it into coils. It is flexible and tough. You gather enough for a small basket. You sit on a mossy log to rest. The mist is beginning to lift, revealing glimpses of the valley below. You can see the river winding like a silver snake through the green. You drink from your flask. The water is cold. You watch a spider weaving a web between 2 ferns. It moves with infinite patience, spinning a spiral of silk. You watch until the web is complete, a perfect geometric trap waiting for the sun to dry the dew. You stand up, your knees creaking slightly. You shoulder your coil of bark. The descent is easier. You walk with a lighter step, gravity helping you down. You emerge from the mist into the bright sunshine of the lower slopes. The heat returns, warming your face. You pass the schoolhouse. The windows are open, and you can hear the sound of children reciting their lessons. A is for anchor, B is for boat. You smile. It is a different kind of discipline than the one you knew, but it is discipline nonetheless. You wave to the teacher who is standing in the doorway. She waves back. You return to your cottage. You soak the cedar bark in a bucket of water to keep it pliable. You sit on the porch in the rocking chair you built last winter. You rock back and forth, the wood creaking a slow rhythm. Krieke, krieke. You watch the shadows lengthen across the grass. The light turns golden, then orange. The day is fading. You are content. You have food. You have shelter. You have quiet. You close your eyes for a moment, listening to the wind in the trees, a sound like the ocean, but greener, softer. You are home. The twilight deepens into true night, bringing with it a silence that feels heavier than usual. The wind has dropped completely, leaving the palm fronds motionless against a sky crowded with stars. You rise from the rocking chair, your body stiff from the long walk up the mountain. You carry the bucket of soaking cedar bark into the shed, covering it with a wet cloth to keep the moisture in. The shed smells of pine resin and dry earth. You close the door, the latch falling with a soft metallic click. You walk back to the cottage, guided by the glow of the single lamp you left burning in the window. It is a beacon, small and steady, marking the center of your world. Inside, you prepare for the night. You rake the ashes in the hearth, finding a few glowing coals still alive beneath the gray dust. You add a log of slow-burning ironwood. The fire catches slowly, blue flames licking along the bark before settling into a steady orange burn. You warm a pot of water for washing. You scrub your hands with a bar of soap that smells of oatmeal and honey, washing away the resin of the cedar grove. The water turns dark in the basin. You dry your hands on a rough towel. You are clean. You are warm. You sit by the fire for a moment, watching the shadows dance on the stone walls. The next morning, the sun is obscured by a high, thin layer of cloud that turns the light a pearlescent white. It is cooler today, a respite from the tropical heat. You eat a breakfast of hard-boiled eggs and cold tea. You dress in a linen shirt and canvas trousers. Today you will work on the basket. You take the bucket of cedar bark out to the porch. You sit on the floor, legs crossed. You begin to split the bark into thin, even strips. Your knife is sharp. Zip, zip. The sound is crisp. The strips pile up beside you, flexible and smelling of the forest. You begin to weave the base over and under, pulling the strips tight. It is a meditative work. Your mind empties. There is only the pattern. By mid-morning, the base is finished. You stand to stretch your legs. You decide to walk to the village to trade for some beeswax. You need it to waterproof the basket. You walk down the hill, the air still and humid. You pass the schoolhouse again. It is recess. Children are playing in the yard, chasing a hoop with a stick. Their laughter is bright and sharp. You wave to the teacher who is sitting on the steps reading a book. She smiles. You continue on to the market. The market is quiet today. A few vendors are dozing in the shade of their stalls. You find the beekeeper, a woman named Sarah who keeps hives on the far side of the island. She is selling jars of honey and blocks of yellow wax. You inspect a block. It is smooth and dense, smelling of summer flowers. You trade a small wooden box you carved last week for the wax. It is a fair trade. You talk for a moment about the bees. She tells you the flow is strong this year. You nod. You have seen the blooms. You walk back along the coast road. The tide is out, exposing the mudflats. A flock of sandpipers is feeding at the water's edge, running in and out with the waves. They move like a single organism, turning and wheeling in perfect unison. You stop to watch them. Their legs are a blur. They are busy, focused on survival. You feel a kinship with them. You turn inland, taking the path through the cane fields. The sugar cane is tall, towering over your head. The leaves rustle dryly as you pass. The air here smells sweet and grassy. You reach your cottage in the early afternoon. You melt the beeswax in a small pot over the fire. It turns to golden liquid. You take your unfinished basket and brush the wax onto the cedar strips. It soaks in, darkening the wood, making it supple and water-resistant. You continue weaving the sides of the basket, shaping it as you go. The wax smells comforting. The work goes quickly now. By late afternoon, the basket is done. It is sturdy and handsome, a deep reddish brown. You set it on the table to cool and harden. The evening brings a light rain, a gentle patter on the roof. You sit on the porch, protected by the overhang, and watch the rain fall. It is a vertical gray curtain. The thirsty earth drinks it up. The smell of wet dust rises, pungent and clean. You drink a cup of tea, warming your hands on the ceramic mug. You watch a gecko hunting moths near the lantern. It is patient, motionless until the moment of the strike. You admire its focus. You go inside and prepare a simple supper. You slice a tomato from the garden, drizzling it with the coconut oil you made. You add a pinch of the sea salt. You eat with a piece of bread. It is fresh and vibrant. You clean your plate and set it on the shelf. You are tired. The climb yesterday and the weaving today have used your energy. You undress and lie down. The rain has stopped, leaving a profound silence. You close your eyes. You sleep. The dawn breaks clear and bright, the sun burning off the dampness of the night. You wake with a sense of purpose. Today is the day to harvest the indigo. You walk down to the low fields near the river where the indigo plants grow wild. The bushes are heavy with green leaves. You cut the stalks with a sickle, gathering them into bundles. The smell is green and slightly bitter. You work steadily, the sun warming your back. You fill 2 large sacks with the plants. You carry the sacks to the dyer's yard. Silas is there, stirring his vats. He nods as you dump the fresh plants onto the ground. He inspects them, nodding his approval. You help him load the plants into a large soaking vat. You cover them with water and weigh them down with stones. The water will ferment the leaves, releasing the blue dye. It is a slow process, taking days. You agree to return for your share of the dye later in the week. You walk back through the village, stopping at the carpenter's shop. You need a piece of sanded pine for a new shelf. The carpenter, a man named Jonas, is planing a board. Long, curly shavings litter the floor. The shop smells of sawdust and glue. You select a board from the stack. Jonas measures it and cuts it to length with a handsaw. The sound is rhythmic. Saw, saw, saw. You pay him with a few coins. You carry the board home on your shoulder. The afternoon is hot. You spend it inside the cool cottage installing the shelf. You use the square nails you bought from the blacksmith. You hammer them into the stone wall, the sound echoing in the small room. You place the board on the supports. It is level. You place your few books on it, along with the clay jar and the basket. It looks ordered and neat. You step back to admire your work. It is a small improvement, but it makes the cottage feel more like a home. As the sun sets, you take a walk to the old stone bridge that crosses the river near the estuary. The water is calm, reflecting the pink and orange of the sky. You lean on the stone parapet, watching the water flow beneath you. A fish jumps, creating a circle of ripples that widens and fades. You drop a leaf into the water and watch it float downstream, carried toward the sea. You think of the ships leaving the harbor, carried by the same currents. You are content to stay on the bridge. You return home in the twilight. The first stars are out. You light the lamp and sit at the table. You take out your bamboo flute. You practice the scales, your fingers moving surely over the holes. The notes are clear and mellow. You play a slow tune, letting the melody fill the room. It is a song of the hills, not the sea. You play until your breath runs out. You wipe the flute and put it away. You eat a cold supper of cheese and fruit. You are not hungry. The day has been full. You extinguish the lamp and lie down. The window is open, letting in the cool night air. You can hear the river in the distance, a low murmur. You close your eyes. The world is at peace. You drift into sleep. The next morning, the wind is blowing from the west, bringing the scent of the open ocean. You wake early. Today you will fish. You take your fishing pole, a simple bamboo rod with a linen line, and a tin of worms you dug from the garden. You walk down to the rocky point past the lighthouse. The waves are crashing against the rocks, sending up spray. You find a sheltered spot and cast your line. The sinker splashes into the water. You wait. The sun rises higher, warming the rocks. You watch the line where it enters the water. Twitches. You pull up sharply. The rod bends. You reel in a silver fish, flashing in the sun. It is a snapper, good eating. You unhook it and place it in your bucket. You cast again. You catch 2 more fish within the hour. It is enough. You pack up your gear. You walk back along the beach. You find a piece of sea glass, blue and frosted. You put it in your pocket. You pass a woman collecting driftwood. You nod. She smiles. You reach your cottage and clean the fish at the outdoor basin. The scales fly off like sequins. You rinse the fillets and wrap them in a leaf. You spend the afternoon in the garden, weeding the rows of beans. The soil is warm and dry. You pull the weeds, shaking the dirt from their roots. You compost them. The sun is hot on your neck. You stop to drink from the water jug. It is cool and refreshing. You finish the row and stand up, brushing the dirt from your knees. The garden looks tidy. In the evening, you cook the fish over the fire. The skin crisps and browns. The meat is flaky and white. You eat with your fingers, savoring the fresh taste. You throw the bones into the fire. They crackle and burn. You sit on the porch, watching the stars come out. The Milky Way is a band of light across the sky. You feel small under the vastness of the universe. You go inside and prepare for bed. You are tired, but it is a good tiredness. You have fed yourself. You have tended your land. You have made something with your hands. You lie down in the dark. The sound of the ocean is a steady heartbeat. You close your eyes and let the rhythm carry you into sleep. The morning mist lies heavy on the valley floor, a white ocean that drowns the roots of the trees and leaves only their canopies floating in the gray light. You wake to the sound of condensation dripping from the thatch, a slow, rhythmic ticking that marks the seconds. The air in the cottage is cool and damp, carrying the scent of wet stone and deep earth. You rise quietly, moving with the slow deliberation of the morning. You pull on a thick woolen sweater, the fabric rough and comforting against the chill. You open the door. The world outside is silent, muffled by the fog. The sea is invisible, its presence known only by the hushed whisper of the surf against the distant sand. You step out onto the porch, your boots making a hollow sound on the wood. You breathe in deeply. The air tastes of water and green leaves. You walk to the side of the house to check the cistern. The recent rains have been generous. You lift the heavy wooden lid, the hinges groaning softly in the damp air. The water level is high, a dark circle reflecting the gray sky above. You dip a ladle in, disturbing the reflection. The water is cold and sweet. You fill the kettle and return inside. You light the stove, the flame blooming blue and steady. While the water heats, you eat a piece of the dark rye bread from yesterday, spreading it with the last of the coconut butter. It is dense and filling. The kettle whistles, a low, rising note. You brew a cup of strong tea, wrapping your hands around the warm ceramic mug. The sun begins to burn through the mist as you finish your tea. It is time to return to the river. The indigo you harvested days ago has finished steeping. You take an empty clay jar, corked and sealed, and a length of rope. The walk down the hill is slippery, the grass wet with dew. You move carefully, watching your footing. The mist is lifting, revealing patches of blue sky and the sparkling green of the jungle. You pass a grove of bamboo, the tall stalks dripping water onto the fern undergrowth. A green parrot watches you from a high branch, silent and observant. You reach the dyer's yard. The air here is pungent, smelling of fermentation and wet earth. Silas is waiting for you. He nods a greeting, his hands stained a deep, permanent blue. He leads you to the vats. The water has been drained away, leaving a thick, dark sludge at the bottom. This is the indigo paste, the concentrated essence of the color. Silas uses a wooden paddle to scoop the paste into your jar. It is heavy and dense, a blue so dark it looks almost black. He fills the jar to the brim and seals it with a cork dipped in wax. You hand him a small bag of silver coins, the price agreed upon. He weighs the bag in his hand and smiles. It is a good transaction. Leaving the dyer's yard, you walk toward the village center. The sun is fully out now, warming the air. You pass the village laundry, where the stone basins are empty and dry, waiting for the washerwomen. You turn down a narrow lane lined with hibiscus hedges. The flowers are open, bright red trumpets facing the sun. You stop at the weaver's cottage. Alara is sitting at her loom on the porch. The rhythmic clack-clack whoosh of the shuttle is a steady heartbeat. She is weaving a rug, the pattern a complex geometry of yellow and brown. You show her the jar of indigo paste. Her eyes light up. She trades you 3 spools of heavy linen thread for a portion of the dye. You measure it out into a small bowl she provides. The blue paste glistens in the sunlight. You walk back toward the coast, the linen thread tucked safely in your bag. The heat of the day is building. You decide to stop at the tidal pools on the north point. The tide is low, exposing the jagged landscape of coral rock. You walk carefully, balancing on the high points. The pools are warm and still. You spot a starfish, bright orange against the gray rock. It is motionless, waiting for the water to return. You sit on a dry ledge, watching the ocean breathe. The waves roll in, break on the outer reef, and wash gently into the pools. It is a cycle that has continued for millions of years. You are just a brief witness. On the way home, you pass a fallen tree, a massive mahogany brought down by a storm years ago. It has bleached silver in the sun. You notice a patch of moss growing in the hollow of the trunk. It is lush and green, velvety to the touch. You carefully peel a section away, keeping the soil attached to the roots. You wrap it in a large leaf. You will add it to the terrarium you keep in the window. You shoulder your bag again and continue the climb. The path is steep here. You feel the pull of gravity in your legs. It is a good ache, a reminder of your strength. You reach the cottage in the early afternoon. You place the linen thread on the shelf next to the cedar basket. You unwrap the moss and place it gently inside the glass jar on the windowsill. You mist it with water. It looks like a miniature forest floor, enclosed and safe. You stand back to admire it. The green is vibrant against the glass. You take the jar of indigo paste to the shed. You will use it later to dye the cotton shirt you are sewing. For now, it rests in the cool darkness. The afternoon turns sultry. Clouds build up in the west, towering white castles that promise rain but do not deliver. You decide to work on the garden wall. A section of the dry stone has shifted, loosening a few rocks. You mix a small batch of mortar in a bucket, combining sand, lime, and water. The mixture is gray and gritty. You use a trowel to spread it between the stones. Scrape. Slap. Smooth. The sound is rough and pleasing. You fit the stones back together, puzzling out the shapes until they lock tight. You wipe away the excess mortar with a damp sponge. The wall is solid again. It will stand against the wind. As the sun begins to lower, casting long shadows across the grass, you gather the dried laundry from the line. The sheets are stiff and smell of sunshine and wind. You fold them on the porch table, smoothing out the wrinkles with your hands. You stack them in a neat pile. You carry them inside and place them in the cedar chest at the foot of your bed. The scent of the cedar wood rises up to meet you. It is a clean, sharp smell that protects the cloth. You decide to take a walk to the old watchtower ruins on the headland before dinner. The tower stands lonely against the sky, a cylinder of weathered stone built 2 centuries ago to watch for sails. The wooden floors have rotted away, leaving only the shell open to the stars. You walk through the arched doorway. The ground inside is covered in soft turf. You sit on a stone bench that has survived the years. You look out through the arrow-slit window. The view is framed in stone, a rectangle of blue sea and pink sky. You watch a frigate bird soar past, riding the updraft from the cliff. It hangs motionless for a moment, then banks away. You feel a sense of connection to the watchers who sat here before you. They watched for danger. You watch for beauty. You return home in the twilight. The first fireflies are blinking in the tall grass. You light the oil lamp, the flame steady and yellow. You prepare a supper of roasted root vegetables. You chop carrots, sweet potatoes, and onions into chunks. You toss them with oil and herbs. You place the iron skillet in the hot ashes of the fire. The smell of roasting vegetables fills the cottage, sweet and savory. You wait, listening to the fire crackle. You turn the vegetables once, watching them brown and caramelize. You eat at the table using a piece of bread to scoop up the soft vegetables. They are hot and comforting. You drink a glass of water cool from the clay pitcher. After dinner, you clean the skillet with sand and water, drying it thoroughly over the fire. You hang it on its hook. The kitchen is tidy. You take the linen thread you traded for and wind it into a tight ball. The motion is rhythmic. Wind. Turn. Wind. The ball grows in your hands, smooth and heavy. The night has fully settled now. You step out onto the porch. The moon is a thin crescent, hanging low over the water. The stars are bright and hard. You can hear the call of a nightjar, a strange, whirring song from the forest edge. You lean against the railing, looking down at the village. A few lights twinkle in the windows, mirroring the stars above. It is a quiet community, resting after the day's labor. You feel a part of it, yet separate in your sanctuary on the hill. You go inside and bolt the door. The sound is final. You check the window latch. Secure. You blow out the lamp. The darkness is immediate and soft. You undress by the light of the dying fire. You slip into bed. The sheets are cool and smooth. You pull the heavy quilt up to your chin. You lie on your back, staring up at the dark beams of the ceiling. You replay the day in your mind. The mist, the indigo, the weaver, the stone wall. Each moment a stone in the foundation of your new life. Your breathing slows. The rhythm of the ocean rises up to meet you, a steady pulse that rocks the island. You drift on the tide of sleep, deep and safe and dreamless. The next morning, the wind has shifted to the north, bringing cool, crisp air from the open ocean. You wake feeling energized, the lethargy of the humidity gone. You dress quickly in heavy canvas trousers and a flannel shirt. Today is a day for heavy work. You need to split logs for the winter woodpile. You eat a bowl of oats sweetened with honey, standing by the window. The sky is a brilliant, polished blue. You watch a hawk circling high above the valley, hunting. You walk to the woodlet behind the cottage. The logs you dragged there last week are seasoned and ready. You take up the splitting maul. The handle is smooth hickory, polished by your grip. You set a round of oak on the chopping block. You breathe in, lift the maul high, and bring it down. Crack. The wood splits cleanly with a sharp report. The two halves fall away, revealing the pale, honey-colored grain inside. The smell of raw oak fills the air, acidic and clean. You work steadily for an hour. The rhythm takes over. Lift, swing, crack. Lift, swing, crack. Your muscles warm up, moving with fluid memory. The pile of split wood grows. You stack the pieces in the woodshed, fitting them together like a puzzle to allow air to circulate. The wall of wood rises, a fortification against the cold nights to come. You stop to wipe your brow. You drink from a canteen of water. The physical effort feels good, grounding you in your body. By noon, the woodshed is full. You brush the sawdust from your clothes. You walk down to the stream to wash. The water is cold and clear, rushing over smooth gray stones. You splash water on your face and neck. You sit on a large rock in the sun to dry off. You watch a dragonfly hovering over the water, its wings iridescent in the light. It darts away, chasing a gnat. You are still. The forest is busy around you, a constant hum of life. In the afternoon, you walk to the village to visit the miller. You have a sack of corn from your garden that needs grinding. The mill is located by the river, a large wooden wheel turning slowly in the current. The sound of the millstones is a low rumble that you feel in your chest. The miller, a large man named Barnaby covered in white dust, greets you. He takes your sack of corn and pours it into the hopper. You watch the golden kernels disappear between the stones. A fine yellow meal pours out the chute below. The air smells of toasted corn and dust. You wait while the grinding finishes. You talk to Barnaby about the river levels. He tells you the water is running steady this year. You nod. You collect your sack of cornmeal, now warm from the friction of the stones. It smells sweet and earthy. You pay the miller with a portion of the meal. You walk back up the hill, the sack heavy on your shoulder. You pass the village orchard again. The apples are beginning to form small green globes on the branches. You reach the cottage as the sun begins to dip. You mix the fresh cornmeal with water and salt to make flatbreads. You cook them on a hot stone by the fire. They puff up and brown, smelling of popcorn. You eat them with a slice of cheese and a tomato. It is a simple, satisfying meal. You sit on the porch, watching the sunset paint the clouds in shades of pink and gold. The evening is quiet. You light a beeswax candle, the one you made yourself. The flame smells of honey. You take out your knife and a piece of soft pine. You begin to whittle. You are carving a spoon. You shape the bowl, scooping out tiny shavings of wood. The knife slices smoothly. You work slowly, refining the curve of the handle. It is quiet work for the end of the day. The candle burns down an inch. You blow it out. The smoke curls up in a gray ribbon. You stand and stretch. You walk to the door and look out. The stars are thick tonight. You find the North Star, hanging steady above the horizon. It is your anchor. You bolt the door. You lie down in bed. The smell of the split oak lingers on your skin. You close your eyes. The river turns the mill wheel. The tide turns the ocean. You turn toward sleep. The night holds you. The passage of time on the island is not measured in hours or minutes, but in the slow, steady thickening of the trunks of the orange trees. Years have drifted by, soft and uncounted, like clouds passing over the face of the moon. You wake one morning to find that the sapling you planted when you first arrived is now a canopy of dark, glossy green that shades the entire side of the cottage. The stone walls of your home have softened, covered in a tapestry of creeping ivy and moss. The house no longer sits on the hill. It has grown into it, rooted as deeply as the mahogany in the high forest. You rise from your bed, your movements slower now, measured with the economy of age. The joints are stiff, but it is a good stiffness, the result of a life spent in honest labor rather than the cramped confinement of a ship's hold. You dress in the same simple manner. Linen trousers, a cotton shirt, sturdy boots. The fabric is worn thin, soft as water against your skin. You open the door, and the familiar hinge sings a quiet note of greeting. The morning light is gold and heavy, filtered through the leaves of your garden. The air is thick with the scent of jasmine and the salt of the eternal sea. You walk out to the porch. The teakwood railing you sanded and oiled so many times has turned a deep, rich mahogany color, smooth as glass under your hand. You run your palm along it. Feels like memory. You look out over the valley. The village has changed little. A few new roofs, a few new boats in the harbor, but the rhythm remains the same. Smoke rises from the chimneys in straight, gray pillars. The sound of the blacksmith's hammer rings out, clear and distant. Clang, clang. It is the heartbeat of the community, and you are part of it. You walk down the garden path. The soil is rich and black, built up from years of compost and care. The passion fruit vine you trellised has become a thick, woody trunk, bearing heavy purple fruit every season. You pick a ripe one, the skin wrinkled and dark. You break it open with your thumbs, eating the sweet, tart seeds standing right there in the sun. It is the taste of the island, complex, wild, and sustaining. You check the hives. The bees are busy, a golden blur of activity. You do not need to smoke them today. You just watch. They know you. You are the keeper of the garden, the quiet giant who moves among the flowers. You decide to walk to the harbor, perhaps for the last time in a long while. You do not go to trade, nor to buy. You go simply to look. The walk down the hill is a journey through your own history. You pass the grove where you gathered coconuts. The trees are taller now. You pass the stream where you cut the bamboo. The grove has expanded, a dense wall of green. You reach the seawall. The stones are warm. You sit, letting your legs dangle over the edge. A ship is preparing to leave. It is a merchant brig, its sails unfurling like white petals. You watch the crew scrambling in the rigging. You can hear the boatswain shouting orders, the rattle of the anchor chain, the creak of the yards. For a moment, a phantom memory rises. The adrenaline of the launch, the fear of the open ocean, the desperate hunger for freedom. But it fades as quickly as sea foam on the sand. You feel no pull. You have no desire to be anywhere but here. The ship catches the wind and begins to move, cutting a white wake through the blue water. You watch it go until it is a speck on the horizon, vanishing into the curve of the earth. You wish them safe voyage. You turn your back to the sea and look up at the green hills. That is your compass now. You return to the cottage in the late afternoon. The light is turning amber. You step inside the cool, dim room. You look at the shelves you built. They are filled with the artifacts of your peace. The clay jar now holding dried lavender. The cedar basket filled with smooth river stones. The piece of blue sea glass catching the last ray of sunlight. The bamboo flute. These are not treasures of gold or silver. They are treasures of time. They are the proof that you existed, that you made, that you lived without destroying. You light the fire in the hearth one last time for the evening. You do not need a large blaze, just a small, comforting glow. You sit in the rocking chair, the wood creaking softly. Krieke, krieke. You pick up the flute. You bring it to your lips. You play a final, slow melody. The notes float out the open window, drifting down the valley to mix with the sound of the surf. It is a song of gratitude. The music fades into silence. The sun sets, and the twilight rushes in, turning the world to violet and gray. You stand and close the shutters. You bolt the door. The sound is solid and final. You are safe inside. You extinguish the lamp. The wick smokes gently, a scent of wax and peace. You undress in the dark. You lie down in the bed that has held you for so many years. The quilt is heavy and warm. You rest your head on the pillow. You listen to the island breathing. The wind in the palms is a soft hush. The ocean is a rhythmic pulse, a heartbeat that matches your own. You think back to the stormy nights, the battles, the fear of the gallows. They seem like stories told about someone else, a stranger who died long ago. You are the man of the garden. You are the man of the hill. You are the man who stopped running. Your breathing slows. The darkness is not empty. It is full of comfort. It wraps around you like a velvet cloak. The tension leaves your muscles, melting into the mattress. Your hands, scarred and strong, relax open. Your mind drifts away from the shore, floating on a calm, moonlit sea. There are no storms here. There are no enemies. There is only the drift. The world turns. The stars will overhead in their ancient, silent dance. The seasons will come and go. The orange trees will bloom and fruit. The river will flow to the sea, and you will sleep, deep, restful, eternal sleep. You have arrived. The journey is over. Good night.